The dog's name was Gunner, and he'd been barking at Locker 47 for 3 days straight. Every soldier in Camp Lejeune walked past that locker. Every single one of them heard the barking, and every single one of them ignored it, except one. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rivera had learned something in 12 years of combat that most people never understand. When a military working dog won't stop barking, you don't ignore it. You listen, because that dog might know something that could save your life. What Marcus found inside Locker 47 didn't just save his life. It saved his entire platoon. And it exposed a conspiracy that went all the way to the top. But before we get to what was in that locker, if you believe in trusting your instincts even when everyone else thinks you're crazy, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. This is a story about courage, about listening when others won't, and about a dog who refused to give up. Now, let's go back to where it all started. Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, 6 a.m. The Marine Corps base was coming alive with the sounds of morning physical training. Boots hitting pavement, drill sergeants shouting cadence, the distant rumble of vehicles in the motor pool. But in the hallway of battalion headquarters, there was a different sound cutting through the routine. Barking. Gunner, a 4-year-old Belgian Malinois and certified explosives detection dog, sat rigid in front of Locker 47, barking with the kind of intensity that made your teeth vibrate. His handler, Corporal Jake Thompson, stood 10 feet away, leash slack in his hand, looking increasingly frustrated. "Gunner, heel!" Thompson commanded for the 7th time that morning. Gunner didn't move, didn't even acknowledge the command. His entire focus was locked on that locker, like it was the only thing in the universe that mattered. Private First Class Danny Chin walked past, coffee in hand, barely glancing at the spectacle. "Your dog broken, Thompson?" "I don't know what's wrong with him," Thompson admitted, pulling harder on the leash. "He's been doing this since yesterday afternoon. Won't leave this hallway." Sergeant Maria Santos paused on her way to the briefing room. "Have you checked the locker?" "It's locked. Belongs to Lieutenant Morrison. He's on leave for another week." Thompson gave the leash another frustrated tug. "Gunner, I swear to God." But Gunner wasn't moving. His barking had shifted to something different now. Not aggressive. Urgent. Like he was trying to tell them something they were too stupid to understand. "Maybe he smells food in there," Chin suggested. "Morrison probably left a sandwich or something." "He's an explosives dog, not a narcotics dog," Thompson snapped. "And he's trained better than this. He's never acted like this before." Santos shrugged. "Well, you can't open Morrison's locker without authorization. And I'm not waking up the lieutenant colonel for a barking dog. Figure it out, Thompson." She walked away. Chin followed. Within minutes, the hallway was empty again except for Thompson and his dog. Thompson knelt down, his voice softening. "Gunner, buddy, what's going on? What are you trying to tell me?" Gunner stopped barking for just a moment, looked at his handler with those intense brown eyes, then turned back to the locker and started barking again, even louder than before. Thompson made a decision. He pulled out his phone and called his supervisor, Master Sergeant Williams. "Sir, I need to report unusual behavior from Gunner. He's been fixated on a locker in Battalion HQ for over 24 hours. Won't respond to commands. I think we should check it out." There was a pause on the other end. Then Williams's gravelly voice. "Whose locker?" "Lieutenant Morrison, sir. He's on leave. Then it can wait until he gets back. Probably smells something irrelevant. Bring Gunner back to the kennel and give him the afternoon off. He's probably just tired." "Sir, with all due respect, I don't think." "That's an order, Corporal. Kennel, now." The line went dead. Thompson stood there, looking at his dog, then at the locker, then back at his dog. Gunner was still barking, against his better judgment. Thompson gave one hard pull on the leash, physically dragging Gunner away from the locker. The dog resisted every step, his claws scraping against the floor, his barking turning almost desperate. As they rounded the corner, Thompson looked back one more time. Locker 47 sat there, silent and unremarkable, just like the 50 other lockers in that hallway. But something in Thompson's gut told him they were making a mistake. That was day one. By day two, Gunner had escaped from the kennel twice, both times running straight back to that hallway, both times sitting in front of locker 47, barking until someone dragged him away again. The story started spreading through the base. Thompson's dog lost his mind. That Malinois is glitching out. Probably smells a dead rat in the wall. Everyone had a theory. Nobody took it seriously. By day 3, Master Sergeant Williams had had enough. He reassigned Thompson and gunnered perimeter patrol as far from battalion headquarters as possible. "Keep that dog away from HQ until Morrison gets back," Williams ordered. "I don't want to hear any more about this locker situation." "Understood?" "Yes, sir." But Thompson couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Gunner had been his partner for 2 years. They'd been deployed together in Afghanistan. Gunner had found IEDs that saved lives, had alerted to threats that intelligence missed. Gunner didn't just bark at nothing. That's when Staff Sergeant Marcus Rivera entered the picture. Marcus was different from most of the soldiers on base. At 41, he was older than the typical enlisted man. He'd done 4 tours in Iraq, 3 in Afghanistan, and had more combat experience than most officers. He'd also learned to trust things that other people dismissed. Marcus had been at Camp Lejeune for 6 months, training the next generation of combat engineers before his retirement in 8 weeks. He'd seen Thompson struggling with Gunner in the hallway on day 1, but he'd been too busy to pay attention. On day 3, Marcus was walking to Battalion HQ on his way to a briefing when he noticed something. The hallway was quiet, too quiet, and there, in front of locker 47, was a small puddle of drool where a dog had obviously been sitting for an extended period. Marcus stopped. He looked at the locker. Standard issue. Combination lock. Name tag read LTJ Morrison. He'd heard the rumors about the barking dog. Most people thought it was funny, a dog losing his mind over nothing. But Marcus had learned something in 17 years of combat that most people never learned. Nothing didn't exist in a combat zone. Everything meant something. You just had to figure out what. He pulled out his phone and called an old friend, Sergeant First Class Anthony Davis, who worked in the K-9 unit. "Tony, tell me about the dog that's been barking at the locker." "Gunner? Man, that dog's been acting crazy. Thompson's pulling his hair out." "What kind of dog is Gunner?" "Belgian Malinois. Explosives detection. One of our best. Which is why it's so weird that he's fixated on this random locker." "Has anyone checked the locker?" "Can't. Belongs to Lieutenant Morrison. He's on leave." Williams told Thompson to just keep the dog away until Morrison gets back next week. Marcus hung up and stared at the locker. Explosives detection dog. 3 days of nonstop alerting. Everyone ignoring it because it seemed impossible. He pulled out his phone again and made another call, this time to Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chun, the battalion executive officer. "Ma'am, this is Staff Sergeant Rivera. I need to report a potential security concern." 20 minutes later, Marcus stood in the hallway with Lieutenant Colonel Chun, Master Sergeant Williams, Corporal Thompson, and Gunner. Williams was clearly annoyed. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this is a waste of time. The dog is probably smelling cleaning chemicals or he's doing exactly what he was trained to do." Marcus interrupted. "Detect explosives." Chin looked at the locker, then at Gunner, who was sitting perfectly still now, staring at locker 47 with laser focus. "Corporal Thompson," Chin said, "in your professional opinion as Gunner's handler, is this a legitimate alert?" Thompson hesitated. His career could be affected by his answer. If he said yes and it was nothing, he looked like an idiot. If he said no and something was actually wrong, people could die. He looked at Gunner, his partner, his friend. "Yes, ma'am. This is a legitimate alert. Gunner doesn't make mistakes." Chin nodded. "Get bolt cutters. We're opening this locker." "Ma'am, without Lieutenant Morrison's permission." Williams started. "I'm giving the order, Master Sergeant. If there's a problem, it's on me." 10 minutes later, a private arrived with bolt cutters. The hallway had been cleared. Only Chun, Williams, Marcus, Thompson, and Gunner remained. The base EOD team was on standby around the corner. Chin nodded at Thompson. "Open it." Thompson cut through the lock with one clean snap. The locker door swung open. For a moment, nobody moved. Inside the locker was exactly what you'd expect. Uniforms hanging neatly, boots on the bottom shelf, a small mirror on the inside of the door, a shelf with toiletries and personal items. Williams exhaled in frustration. See? Nothing. Just a waste of... Wait, Marcus said. He stepped closer, his eyes scanning the locker carefully. Years of looking for IEDs in Iraq had trained him to see what others missed. The boots on the bottom shelf were positioned oddly, not lined up properly, like they'd been moved recently and not put back quite right. Nobody touch anything, Marcus said. He knelt down and looked at the boots without touching them. Behind the boots, pushed against the back wall of the locker, was something that didn't belong. A small electronic device. Wires. A battery pack. Get EOD up here, Marcus said quietly, and evacuate this building. Now. The next 30 minutes were controlled chaos. The building was evacuated. The EOD team suited up and carefully examined the device. The base went into lockdown, and when the EOD team finally emerged, their assessment made everyone's blood run cold. It's a remotely detonated explosive device, the EOD chief, Warrant Officer Peters, reported to Lieutenant Colonel Chun. Sophisticated. Military grade. About 2 pounds of C4. If it had detonated, it would have killed everyone in this hallway and probably brought down part of the building. Chen's face went pale. How long has it been there? Based on the battery level, I'd say 3 to 4 days. The same amount of time Gunnar had been barking. Why hasn't it been detonated? Marcus asked. Peters shook his head. The detonator has a remote trigger. Someone has to send the signal. My guess? They were waiting for the right moment. Maximum casualties. What right moment? Chen asked. Marcus's eyes widened as realization hit him. The change of command ceremony. It's scheduled for next week. Every senior officer on base will be in that building. Chen grabbed her radio. Get me the provost marshal. Now. And I want Lieutenant Morrison found immediately. The investigation moved fast. Within 2 hours, they discovered that Lieutenant Morrison hadn't actually gone on leave. He'd gone AWOL 3 days ago. His leave paperwork had been forged. Within 4 hours, they found Morrison's apartment completely cleaned out. No furniture. No personal items. Nothing. Within 6 hours, they discovered that Lieutenant James Morrison wasn't even his real name. His real name was James Kozlov, and he was a Russian intelligence operative who'd been embedded in the U.S. military for 6 years. And within 8 hours, they found 5 more devices. 1 in the officers' club, 1 in the armory, 1 in the base hospital, 1 in the command center, and 1 in the barracks that would be housing a visiting platoon of Special Forces operators arriving the next day. Every single device was set to be remotely detonated during the change of command ceremony. The plan was to kill as many senior officers as possible, destroy critical infrastructure, and create chaos on one of the largest Marine Corps bases in the country. It would have been the worst terrorist attack on U.S. military soil in history. And it was stopped because 1 dog wouldn't stop barking and 1 veteran wouldn't stop listening. The manhunt for Kozlov took 3 days. He was found trying to cross into Mexico with a fake passport. When they arrested him, he had the detonator in his pocket. He'd been waiting for the ceremony, waiting for the perfect moment to push the button. The debriefing took weeks. The investigation revealed a network of embedded operatives that led to arrests across 3 countries. The conspiracy went higher than anyone wanted to admit, but the immediate aftermath happened much faster. Corporal Jake Thompson and Gunner were awarded commendations for exceptional service. Gunner received a medal specifically designed for military working dogs who save lives. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rivera received the soldier's medal for his actions, though he tried to refuse it. I just paid attention, he told Lieutenant Colonel Chun when she insisted he accept. The dog did all the work. You listened when everyone else dismissed it, Chin replied. That takes a different kind of courage. The change of command ceremony still happened 1 week late, with every security measure imaginable in place. And during that ceremony, Lieutenant Colonel Chun did something unprecedented. She called Gunner up to the stage. The Belgian Malinois walked calmly beside Thompson, sat perfectly at attention, and looked out at the assembled Marines with those intense brown eyes. This dog saved this battalion. Chin said into the microphone. He alerted for 3 days straight, and we almost ignored him. We almost dismissed what he was trying to tell us because it seemed impossible, because it was inconvenient, because it didn't fit our expectations. She paused, looking out at the crowd. How many times do we do that in combat? How many times do we ignore the warning signs because they don't match our assumptions? How many times do we dismiss the gut feeling, the small detail, the thing that doesn't quite fit? The crowd was silent. This dog didn't care about rank, didn't care about protocol, didn't care about being convenient. He cared about keeping his Marines safe, and he didn't give up until someone listened. Chin knelt down and looked Gunner in the eyes. Good boy, Gunner. You're a very good boy. The entire battalion erupted in applause, but the story didn't end there. 3 weeks later, Marcus Rivera was cleaning out his office, preparing for retirement, when Thompson knocked on his door. Staff Sergeant, got a minute? Always. What's up? Thompson sat down, Gunner lying at his feet. I wanted to thank you for listening, for backing me up when everyone thought I was crazy. Marcus shook his head. You don't need to thank me. You knew your dog. You trusted him even when everyone else doubted. But you're the one who got the lieutenant colonel involved. If you hadn't pushed, if you hadn't stood by your dog's alert, none of it would have mattered. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Can I tell you something I learned in Iraq? Of course. I had a dog handler in my platoon, guy named Rodriguez. He had a German shepherd named Ace. One day we're on patrol, and Ace alerts on a building. Standard clear. But Rodriguez doesn't like something about how Ace is acting. Says something's different. Marcus's face grew serious. We almost ignored it. We'd cleared 20 buildings that day. We were tired, hot, ready to get back to base. But Rodriguez wouldn't move. Said Ace had never acted exactly like this before. What was it? Secondary device. The building was clear, but there was an IED rigged to blow when we exited the back door. It would have killed 6 of us. Ace saved our lives because his handler knew the difference between a normal alert and something more. Marcus looked at Gunner. Your dog was telling you something was different. You just needed someone to help you prove it. Thompson was quiet for a moment. Then he said, What happened to Rodriguez and Ace? Marcus's expression darkened. Rodriguez didn't make it home. Neither did Ace. They hit an IED 3 weeks before the end of deployment. I'm sorry. Me too. Marcus stood up and extended his hand. But they taught me something. When a dog handler says their dog is telling them something, you listen. Always. Because those dogs see things we miss. And the handlers know their partners better than anyone. They shook hands. What are you going to do after retirement? Thompson asked. Marcus smiled. Funny you should ask. I'm starting a program training veterans to work with service dogs. Specifically, teaching people to trust what the dogs are telling them. That's perfect. Yeah, figure it's the best way to honor Rodriguez and Ace, and every other handler and dog who served. Thompson stood to leave, then paused at the door. Staff Sergeant, can I ask you something? Shoot. Why did you take it seriously? When everyone else thought it was crazy, why did you listen? Marcus thought about it for a moment. Because I've been on the other side, he finally said. I've been the person who saw something that didn't make sense, who knew something was wrong, but couldn't prove it, who got dismissed because it seemed impossible. He looked directly at Thompson. I've been the person nobody listened to, and people died because of it. I swore I'd never be the person doing the dismissing. I'd rather investigate 100 false alarms than ignore the one real threat. Thompson nodded slowly. The world needs more people like you. No, Marcus said. The world needs more people like you. People who trust their instincts. People who don't give up just because everyone thinks they're wrong. People who stand by their partners even when it's hard. After Thompson left, Marcus sat alone in his office for a long time. He thought about Rodriguez and Ace, about the 6 lives they'd saved with that alert, about how Rodriguez had stood his ground even when everyone wanted to move on. He thought about all the close calls in 17 years of combat, all the time someone's instinct, someone's training, someone's refusal to ignore a warning sign had made the difference between life and death. And he thought about Gunner, sitting in that hallway for 3 days, barking at Locker while everyone walked past. One dog, one handler who believed in him, one veteran who refused to dismiss what didn't make sense. That's all it took to save an entire battalion. The official after-action report would document the security breach, the investigation, the arrests. It would analyze how Kozlov had infiltrated the military, how the explosives were placed, how the plot was coordinated. But buried in the appendices, there was a single line that told the real story. Initial threat detection by MWD gunner. Alert sustained for 72 hours before investigation authorized. 72 hours of barking. 72 hours that everyone ignored, until one person didn't. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in trusting your instincts even when everyone thinks you're crazy, hit that subscribe button. Comment below with your city, and let me know if you've ever had a moment where you knew something was wrong, but everyone dismissed you. Those moments matter. Those instincts save lives. And remember, whether the military working dog, a gut feeling, or a small detail that doesn't quite fit, never ignore the warning signs. Never dismiss something just because it seems impossible. Because sometimes the thing that seems crazy is the only thing keeping people alive. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rivera retired from the Marines 8 weeks later. He started his service dog training program and dedicated it to the memory of Rodriguez and Ace. Corporal Jake Thompson and Gunner continued serving together for another 3 years before Gunner retired. Thompson adopted him, and Gunner lived out his retirement chasing tennis balls and sleeping on the couch, a hero who never understood he was a hero. And Locker 47 in battalion headquarters was permanently retired from use. A small plaque was installed on it that read, "Trust the dog. Listen to the handler. Question everything." It's still there today. A reminder that sometimes the most important intelligence doesn't come from satellites or surveillance or classified briefings. Sometimes it comes from a dog who won't stop barking and a person who won't stop listening.